I'm April Morrison, Doctor of Physical Therapy, accidental entrepreneur, and lifelong learner. You're tuned in to the Idaho Physio podcast, where we talk about things health, wellness, and high performance in all areas of life. The big goal here is to talk to high achievers and those that surround themselves with the top performers in their fields to get some insights, tips, and inspiration that we can all use in our daily lives. The title may say Idaho, but the content reaches far beyond our borders and is relevant for everyone, regardless of where you find yourself. As always, the content you are about to hear does not replace the medical advice of your doctor, so please seek professional opinions should you need them. Now kick back, relax, and enjoy the episode. We are glad you're here. All right, we are back. Let's do this. This is April Morrison, the Idaho Physio, and today we have Ryan Hills from Washington State as our guest today, which is actually kind of a big deal. Ryan, don't tell him I said this, even though he's listening, is a big deal in his industry. He has been in mortgages for over 15 years and promoting content and all that stuff for at least the last 10 on his RE source. So in his off time, he likes to spend endless hours at the office at Movement Mortgage over in Washington, and he is just crushing it, doing some amazing things for that company. So I am just so fortunate to be able to introduce him, a guy I've known for a couple of years now. So, hey, welcome to chat with us. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm kind of blushing from that intro, but not a big deal at all. I work hard and fortunate to have a really amazing team, and we are accomplishing some cool things this year, but nothing special, but just hard work and commitment.
Lies. All right. So it's actually probably strange for you to be on the opposite side of this coin, because you do a lot with our resource in the real estate industry and do a lot of interviews and chat with people, and you're just crushing it with content. Super fun to watch too, even though I'm not in the industry. It's kind of cool to hear what's going on. And I always hear it in the background in our house too. So I hear your voice all the time in our house, which is very strange since you're in Washington. And
I love that. I'm in your head. And I love that we're crossing over too, just not realtors and lenders. And that's like one of our nicest compliments that we get is when somebody that's not in the industry actually values the content that we create. So honestly, means a lot that you guys find value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially because you explain it in ways that even I can understand. Someone that's not in the industry, and, I've only purchased one home in my life. The fact that,
Wow.
So the fact that, I get what you're saying and it makes total sense to me. You're either lying really well or you're just really good at explaining it. So maybe you can start by kind of giving us a tour of how you got into this field and how you started doing it.
It's interesting when talking about the communication method. We were talking about earlier things that set people apart, like successful people and ones that are trying to be successful type thing. 15 years ago, there was probably the most successful person in the business back then was a guy named Barry Habib, who ended up selling his company for multi-millions of dollars. And then ended up doing like Broadway and owns the show of Rock of Ages, has a show on Vegas. He's a personal friend of mine now. But I remember saying the same thing that you just said to me. So that means the world to me, which is like, Barry, man, like you talk about really complex things, but I understand them. And he was a master in communication. I remember 10 years ago when I started creating content with the RE Source, that was my goal. Like, I'm going to try to break down really complex things and kind of be like Barry, like emulate somebody that's been there, done that on a world-class level. So definitely took years to get there and practice and commitment. If you go back and watch the shows that we started 10 years ago, I mean, they're laughable. Just like anything, just like when you start, working out for the first time, like, oh, that was a terrible workout. I only lasted 20 minutes and didn't accomplish much. But years later or months later, you're able to do quite a bit more. So the communication thing was merely me just trying to emulate somebody that was so successful at a high level. And I appreciate you saying that. But 10 years ago, to your question, we started the show because I was a young originator after the Great Recession without any business. And I was just sharing this with one of our new LOs, and she was asking questions about how could she build her business. and she's having a tough time right now. It's COVID, people aren't out. She's a loan officer trying to build a successful business, and typically we work with realtors. Well, realtors aren't at the office, and some of them are busy, some of them are really slow. So she's got a really tough challenge at hand. And I said, well, my approach, kind of told the story that I won't get into, is 10 years ago, I needed to figure out a way to be relevant in my community. I wasn't working with any realtors. I had no referral partners. Nobody knew my name. Nobody even cared. And I started a show called The RE Source with Ryan Christensen, who's still with me today as a partner in the RE Source. And our goal was just to simply be relevant. Like people have got to learn who I am, and I've got to provide value and try to be relevant to them. And it was a gravitational pull strategy to try to, attract referral partners into, at least, first of all, knowing my name, and then going, is this guy maybe somebody I want to work with? And it worked. I mean, it didn't work right out of the gate, just like most things. It took work, and we had to both learn a lot. Both were self-taught, how to communicate, how to shoot a video, edit a video, build a website. RC was learning his stuff. I was learning how to try to communicate in a short, concise manner. And over time it worked. And our original goal was to be relevant in Puyallup. And we ended up gaining views in every state, across the country. And that's when we knew we were onto something special. And that led to bigger and better things. And we've traveled the country, and we've spoke to organizations and individuals, and you kind of just shared and poured our heart out with them, because it's not something that we monetize. It's more of like that we're super passionate about it.
Right.
So it's super rewarding, at least for me. RC and Nikki might think differently, but we get to add value into the world's biggest industry, which is real estate. And if we can be an influencer into that industry, that's pretty cool in my book.
Yeah, I've seen that your name has popped up as keynote speaker a few times for places. And I know people recognize RC everywhere you guys go. Yep. Sometimes more often than you. So that's pretty fun to talk about.
I'm in the corner while he's signing autographs typically.
But I think it's important to know that it takes kind of a team and a village to do that, to get, the information out there, and to make sure that what you're saying, like you said, is relevant, that people can relate to it, and then they can understand it too. Not just in the industry you're in, but, beyond. So pretty cool.
And it's afforded us so many abilities to work. Like, again, I mentioned Barry. He was probably the most successful person in the biggest industry. So you got to put that in context. That's a big saying. And so we've been able to do that over 10 years, work with the best of the best in the biggest industry, handling billions of dollars, and learning like what makes them tick, trying to emulate them. Like, oh man, like success, in my opinion, isn't really hard to find like the blueprint for. You can find that. What's hard is implementing and having like the work ethic, which is, I think, number one thing that separates people in terms of being successful or not, is the work ethic to go, okay, I see the blueprint. Am I willing to do what the blueprint takes? Same way, like if you're working out, most people can see that blueprint, like eat better, run, be active, lift weights, and be consistent. We're just not like committed enough to do it. It's not a secret. It's the blueprint's there. And including myself, like I struggle with my weight a lot. I've been trying to get in better shape, and I've never seemed to get there, but I'm not going to give up. Here I am years later, still trying to get to that, place where I feel comfortable. That's the big differentiator, is the work ethic and commitment to, try a thing and then fail, but then try another thing and another thing and another thing until you get to the thing that finally succeeds.
Have you found that? Yeah, that totally makes sense. Have you found that when you try the thing and then you fail, do you try like multiple things at the same time, or are you just kind of doing one and pouring all your heart and energy into that, and then that doesn't work, or maybe it takes off and then you try another thing? Or do you always have like a ton of iron in the fire when you're going?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I've learned and what I've watched, and again, working with people across the country, is top performers hate failure, but they actually seek it. Like they work so hard to find that failure. Again, my analogy I've been referencing is kind of working out and getting in shape. Think about how we get our bodies in shape. We take them to failure, right? Like you lift, doing bench like maybe 100 times, so you can't do it again, and then you're sore for another day or two. You've taken those muscles to failure, and then they do what? They rebuild themselves stronger. So the top performers consistently fail, but they're not afraid of it.
Right.
They hate that they fail because they're top performers. Like they're driven like nobody's business, but it doesn't paralyze them. That's where most people I see and I've worked with will try a thing, it'll fail. And that's not, it's typical. It's not crazy that you failed, but they'll stop. They'll stop video. We get asked all the time about video, obviously. And the secret to video is, just like any strategy, is the commitment to it moving forward. All right, I tried this one. It didn't work. Okay, well, what are you going to try next?
Right.
And so that's probably the second most valuable thing I see in working with top performers and influencers is they'll continue to try things to find failure. And then eventually they'll find the thing that works. And to your question, yeah, the more irons you had in the fire, the more things that you're trying, of course, you're going to find out, you're going to learn even from your failures, right? You're going to learn what doesn't work. So if you're trying 4 or 5 things, we're going to find out pretty quick what doesn't work, and we're eventually going to find what does work. The important thing is that if you're not finding failure in your life, in my opinion, you're not pushing hard enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that a lot of people, they have a hard time getting out of their comfort zone as it is. And so they get just a tiny little bit out and then they're successful and they say, okay, now I'm just going to go just a tiny bit more. And they take it in a lot of baby steps as opposed to just skyrocketing and,
right.
Push to the end of that limit and see what you can get to, because it's a little more comfortable for people. And then if they fail, they don't fail so hard or so big. When really they're losing out, the
comfortability is the crutch, like you said. And it's that old saying of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I am it's in my DNA now. I don't have to fight it. Like I'm actually uncomfortable when I'm in too much of an easy setting. Like I need to be pushing myself harder to find failure, the team as well, because I know that I'm getting complacent.
How did you get to that point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable?
Throwing yourself in the deep end over and over again.
Really?
Literally like the first time you're looking at it and you're like, oh my God, I can't jump in. And you've got to overcome the first time that you jump into the deep end. And then you're like, you get out and you're like, okay, I didn't die. Okay, let's do it again. And then eventually it's not something you have to work on. It's part of your DNA, but you consistently have to throw yourself in that deep end and consistently find failure and know that it didn't kill me. I'm still alive. And the best part is I know what not to do, and I'm going to try something new moving forward.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. I think that, throwing yourself into the deep end can be a scary thing. But I think after you do it over and over again, you end up being an Olympic swimmer. And
exactly. Great point.
Because that's all you can do, right? So
yeah, I mean, Megan is another, oddly enough, works with Barry Habib and out of New York, and she just started a podcast from day one. And you probably know something about that. That can be scary, and you throw yourself in the deep end, and you do one. You're like, okay, that wasn't too scary. I accomplished it, found some value, had a great conversation, and then you find out, oh my goodness, maybe you're Joe Rogan years later, and you got the world's #1 podcast, but it would have never started had you not thrown yourself in the deep end. Right. And tried the podcast. So, anybody listening, whatever that is, if it's a podcast or starting video or, tiptoeing in social, working out, like throw yourself in the deep end, do it again. And eventually, to April's first question, it's like, it eventually becomes your DNA. And you don't have to work at that. And you're finally comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's where you refine and find, in my opinion, like true success.
So I know you surround yourself with a lot of people that tend to throw themselves kind of head first in the deep end. Mm-hmm. I know you do a lot of, recruiting of people and getting a lot of people on board your team. You've got an amazing team up there in Washington, not just your resource guys, but, with movement mm-hmm. as well. And so I didn't know if there's a trait or a common thread, beyond the whole not being afraid to fail. If there's mm-hmm. other things that you notice with these high achievers, high performers that either a habit or a way of life that they have that you seek when you're trying to add someone.
Yeah. And it's with my team, and then also, traveling and seeing some of the, mega producers that are doing hundreds of millions. It's kind of those traits as well. And it's the first two are work ethic, and then, being okay with failure, hating it, but knowing that it's not the end of the world. Those are probably my top two that I see the most.
Okay.
And I've learned over time, but then actually, it's funny. I know a lot of people that are successful and they don't have a plan. That would be my third one, like an actual strategy that they run. It's crazy. They actually have good success in their lives. They're making money that most people, would be like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't dream of. And they don't write down a thing. Like they don't have a business plan. They're not revisiting it. They're not looking at it. And I'm not advocating for no plan. What I'm saying is I know people that are successful with that, but I've also watched them consistently hit a ceiling.
Okay.
And the truly special ones, those next level people, and I'm talking like the Tom Brady's of the world, maybe Casey Crawford's of the world, Russell Wilson, our quarterback, he always says the separation's in the preparation. If you want to separate yourself, it's in the preparation. And that to me separates top performers is one thing. CEOs, executives, change makers, influencers, the Apple CEOs and, Gary V's of the world. They have a plan that they are actually executing and daily, weekly going back. And again, kind of back to my earlier thing, what worked, what didn't work, not afraid of failure. So let's try this. That's the big one that separates the big boys from the next level, is actually having a plan and a strategy, implementing it. And I mean, Gary Vee is a great example to that. If anybody watches Gary Vee, you'll see him constantly trying new things, but he definitely, there's a method to his madness, even though it doesn't seem like there is. Okay. He's really good at hiding the strategy of, oh, I just happen to be getting on this plane, dropping this awesome, bit of knowledge. Oh, whoops, it got recorded and that went viral. No, that was all by design and all by plan. He just is really good at making it look like this was just this authentic moment that happened on the fly, right? That's what really separates people, is having that strategy and that plan and constantly revising it. Sure, you can find some success without any plans and strategy. Special ones, they're just a little bit different.
So do you yourself follow like a daily ritual, or like you have to be up at this time, you have to be at work by this time, or are you kind of more of a free flow, like to go wake up when you wake up, or, how does that work for you?
It's funny. I got newer LOs in the business and they're finally getting some business and they're struggling to work an 8-hour day. Now, between you and I and everybody watching, they probably have enough work in the day to do about 2 hours worth of work. But for them, it's taking 8 hours and they can't get anything done. Their hair's on fire. Mm-hmm. And it's because they don't have a strategy to their day. There's no plan to it. And so they're taken with the wind wherever that may blow. So for me, I'm not like ultra neurotic about my day, but there's certainly a plan, especially with working out and being consistent with scheduling my workouts. And then this is what I'm going to accomplish in the morning, whether that's going to be income producing activities or maybe fulfilling a bunch of the loans that we have, writing the RE source. The special ones actually are very, very proactive about scheduling their day. The reactive ones, their efficiency drops so bad because again, there's not really any plan or strategy throughout the day. So I'm very particular about my calendar. First of all, it's digital. It's not written down. So no matter where I go, it's here too.
Right.
And I also use my calendar as things that remind me of what I'm working on. So if I have a consistent theme that I'm working on, or maybe a certain trait or attribute or a goal, it'll be the first thing that I see every morning when I wake up. So the first thing before I start working out or start my emails, it'll be in there every day. It's a reoccurring event and it's coded green for a reason. So I see it, I'm reminded, it's top of mind. For a long while, it was as simple one as #205. And that was the weight that I wanted to get down to.
Okay.
I wanted to get down to 205. And so every day I'm like, what am I doing to get to 205 today? Am I eating better? Did I run? Did I work out? Now I hit that. And the goal for me and the payoff is I get to kind of move that off.
Yeah.
And then insert the next thing I'm working on every day or every week or every month. And I will not remove it until I've accomplished it. So whatever that personal or professional goal is, it's in my calendar. It's the first thing I look at. And then I start my day. And it's very planned out as much as I can. But I can get a lot done in a day because of that. And again, what separates top performers from not is they have the same strategy. I mean, when you're doing, when your husband's doing 60 loans a month or whatever it is, there's no way you can do that without a strategy. Right. There's simply no way. And without a team, like, to what you said earlier, again, he's an ultra performer. He's a rock star. And there's a lot of strategy to how he built his business, how he's building it, and how he fulfills it. So again, the blueprint isn't hard. It's right there. You can see it. You get the answers to the test.
Right.
What's hard, are you going to take the time to implement that every single day? And then are you going to be committed to that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think that is the hard part. Is a lot of people can look at the plan in front of you, you can see that roadmap, but do you have that grit in you to actually do the things that need to be done? Or are you going to just kind of wuss out and be like, meh, I know it's there. Right. I could do it, but I can't because of X, Y, Z, because, it's too hard, or I don't have enough time, or, my spouse or children or pets need to take priority, or parents, or whatever it is. I think we're kind of a society of excuses sometimes and we wonder, how come that person has that success? Well, because they have the grit. That's kind of what I like to say.
Yeah. It's probably natural for us to look at that person and go, wonder why they have that success, right? And you kind of scratch your head. There's a really good book called Talent is Overrated that I read years ago. And the general premise is nobody is born with talent. Like Tiger Woods wasn't born an amazing golfer, and Mozart wasn't. And it goes through all these examples throughout life with art and athletes and CEOs. And a lot of people will be like, oh, so-and-so is so good at a young age, until you really look at their story and see that Tiger Woods had a golf club at age 3. He wasn't born with anything. Like, we're born blank slates. We're a product of our environment, good, bad, right, wrong, or indifferent. Right. Well, his environment was a golf club in his hand. And the examples with art and music, their fathers were successful and put a paintbrush in their hand at a young age, or started composing music at a young age. And so that all kind of goes to show you that it's nobody's born with the talent. Nobody's born with that, a successful business. They learn that over time, and they maybe achieved a lot at a young age with, like, say, Tiger Woods, but you don't see all the hustle and grit all the way up that started at age 3. To get him to win a, junior championship. I think it was age 10, 11, or 12. So that's 7 years of grinding. Oh, he was born with it. No, he wasn't. You forgot the 7 years. You probably would be offended if you said that to him. He took away all the 7 years of hard work and, the work ethic to get there, and the millions of rounds of golf,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably, I know we don't have the Olympics this year, but that's one of the things about the Olympics that I've loved lately is watching the story, like how they got to this point story. And it's always the hours in the gym or in the pool, or, the parents who are bringing their kids to the hockey rink at 2 a.m, or, whatever it is. I think it's, you forget about that. You think that, oh man, that person is just an amazing performer, but it takes time, it takes effort.
Have you seen, speaking of the Olympics, Weight of Gold?
No.
Oh, you have to go watch it. Sorry, quick tangent, but everybody, this is an amazing, I think it's a documentary. It might be on Netflix, but
okay.
Weight of Gold, and it's like the weight of gold around their neck and what it takes to get there, and them kind of mortgaging, pun intended, their life away at a young age to get the gold. And I won't ruin it, but it's an amazing documentary, and it shed light on things. Mental health was a big part of it that I was shocked to watch. These top performers share these stories. I really don't want to ruin it, but you guys got to go watch it. Weight of Gold.
Okay.
Anyways.
Weight of Gold. Awesome. Did it follow specific athletes, or just kind of?
Yeah, there's Michael Phelps narrates, but he also tells his own personal story, which was shocking to me because you don't see that side of him. You've only seen the, champion, Superman on his chest guy. So he gets real vulnerable. And then there's 7 other Olympic athletes that also tell their story. Shaun White, the snowboarder, Lola Jones, and then a handful of others. And it's just amazing. It's relevant to the conversation we're having. And then it's also super interesting to see them get vulnerable and share how they got there and what it cost them. I always tell RC this, like, everything comes at a cost.
Totally.
Everything. Being a good husband, which sounds weird. Like, everybody, yes, of course we should be good husbands and good fathers. It all comes at a cost. Like, you have to take time away from your professional career to have work-life balance, to be a good husband and a good father.
You can say that louder for the people in the back.
Right? Everything has a cost. Nobody likes to look at the cost. They like to look at the price. So if you want to be relevant at a high level, a world-class level, it's going to cost you a lot. Tiger Woods, it cost him his marriage.
Yeah.
Right? To be the most amazing golfer ever. There's a cost because we did a show years ago called the 4 burner theory. It's a really interesting show on how there's only so much of you to go around. And so I'm going to butcher my own show, but it was like personal, professional, and a couple others. Well, you can have 4 burners on at 25%, or you can have one at 100% and the rest are at 0. A lot of elite athletes have that problem. Even Kobe had that problem. I love him. But that burner was on at 100%, and it took away from being a father, a husband, and other things. And yes, you saw this amazing career, but there are costs and ramifications from that.
I love that analogy of the 4 burners. That's that's totally visual. You can absolutely relate to that and see it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And being strategic about your day, another positive of that is you can find work-life balance. You can accomplish so much professionally throughout the day and still be a high, top performer, but get home at a reasonable time to go be a good husband, father, wife, mother. That's another reason why you want to be ultra strategic and efficient throughout your day. So you can do both. So you can still have work-life balance, still play hard after work. If you don't have any strategy, you work a 10-hour day that should have been a 4.
Yeah.
That's just a waste of little time that you could have just been working more efficiently.
Well, and I think that, you look back on your week and you're like, holy crap, it's Friday. What did I accomplish? And if you can look at your calendar and see all those things.
Oh yeah. I did that. Yep. I talked to them. I accomplished it. I've been trying to, do that thing. That's a great
talked to Ryan Hills. I did all these important things. But yeah, you can look at that all and you can see it. Whereas if you don't have a schedule, you don't have a structure, you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants, you don't remember what you did. Life just kind of flies by. Cool. Yeah. I love the Way to Gold. I'm excited to watch that. Are you a big reader? Do you find yourself reading frequently?
I have a lot of books, and I was just the loan officer I was talking to, the new one before this call. We just had this conversation because she was like, I don't like to read and I have a short attention span. I'm like, I freaking hate reading. First of all, I cannot stand it. What's weird is I won't allow myself to do a digital book though. So I've never done one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because for some reason in my weird head, I value, the actual paper because I highlight and then take notes on the books that I have.
Okay.
And she asked me, it was a weird question. She goes, well, why? Why do you do that? Like, why do you read self-help books? And I don't like calling them self-help. Like I got triggered. I hate that word. But I was like, wait, what? Self-help? I'm like, no, I love reading these styles of books. There's a couple of them here because they're refining me. They're like pushing me to be a better version, which I always share with my team. Like I'm on Ryan Hill's version 43.0 and shame on me if I don't get to 44.0. Like, reading another opposing view or being challenged by somebody else that thinks or believes a certain way only helps me refine myself. And reading these books, help me do that. And they help refine my position, help me become a better version of myself. So that was kind of my answer to a question, like, why do you read self-help books? Ugh.
Right. Personal growth.
It's a challenging book. We should always, challenge ourselves to be better versions of ourselves. I don't know if that's labeled self-help or just a really good book that made me, question a thing or refine a strategy.
Yeah.
So I've had this thing going for 5 years and I have to stop because my bookshelf's getting huge. Is anytime, no matter where I was, I made a commitment. If anybody said, hey, Hills, have you ever read blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. I'd have to pick up Amazon and buy the book. That was my commitment. Because I'm like, if I'm talking to them, it's probably somebody I value. Mm-hmm. And if they're throwing something out that helped them become a better version of themselves, then I should probably read it. And so I've done that for 5 years. And so I've got this big arsenal of books and I haven't gotten through them all. But that's the reason why I read. I don't think I've ever read a fiction book. So I don't like reading stories, but I do like being challenged. And that's the style of book that I'll read. And then, like I told her, it's one thing to read. It's another thing to read, retain, and then implement.
Right.
So I actually have a strategy when I read that I'll read, highlight, like I said, and then I'm printing out the executive summary, little life hack. If you don't know that, they exist. It'll take a whole book and knock it down to 4 or 5 pages. It's just the meat. Don't
like
read the book first and then the summary. A lot of people just read the summary.
Like in college.
But then I print out the summary and I slide that in the book, and then I kind of write my notes of what really I want to take away or implement, the big aha moments in those books.
I like that. Anything that you have read recently that you recommend or that you were telling your LO earlier?
An old book I was recommending to her was called Start With No. It's a really good book written by a negotiator that was negotiating military contracts that were worth billions. And so if you're in sales and everything's a negotiation, no matter if you believe it or not, like everything, even with your wife and you're talking to her, is a negotiation, whether you're going to do the dishes or not.
Right.
Like everything's a negotiation. This will help you negotiate better and communicate better. And that's a really good old school book, Start With No. 12-Week Year, I read this year. That was recommended by Casey Crawford. I think that's an amazing book. It's simple read, helps you schedule your day and your week like we talked about and accomplish a lot of things. And it's the premise is essentially, instead of setting 1-year goals, you're chunking that up into smaller achievable goals in smaller timeframes. So 12 weeks.
Yeah,
and we've implemented that with my team. And one of the things that I did that I'm proud of is we added a personal savings goal. So we're fortunate to have a lot of business in our business right now.
Sure.
And I've been around for a while, so I know how this goes. We make a lot of money. People tend to spend a lot of money. So I've been really passionate about trying to help my team save money. And so I've asked them to set aside personal savings goals. And we've been doing this all year. And so we've had these 12 weeks come and go, and they're hitting their volume goals and their personal goals, and they're hitting their savings goals, which is really cool to me because it's like, I didn't think I could save this much money. Not only did I did that, but another 30% more.
Right. That's amazing. And because you never know, especially in the real estate industry, the peaks and valleys happen. And, when
Always,
one valley, you don't know when that's going to start and you don't know when it's going to end. So it's always great to have savings and some backup money.
There's a horrible saying in our business that, oh, he or she has made it and lost it more times than I can count.
Ooh.
I don't ever want to make and lose anything. Like I want to, constantly build on what I've accomplished in yesteryear. So I learned that at an early age. And I was fortunate I say fortunate, I didn't misspeak, to live through the Great Recession. It taught me a lot. Yeah. And saving, no matter if you're in our industry or not, and preparing for a rainy day, #COVID right now, will never be a bad idea. It'll never go out of style.
Right.
And it'll give you some freedom to act and behave how you want versus out of desperation.
Right. Or turn around and use that money to make more money and, invest in, and then buffer your life even further. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to think of my money like soldiers. I want it to go out and find more soldiers for me, but that only happens if I invest.
That's smart. Yeah, that's good. Little dollar bill soldiers running.
Exactly.
around.
Go find more friends, please, and bring them back.
Make friends multiply. They're like little rabbits. I like to think of them as rabbits.
Yes. Multiply like rabbits.
Right. So what's in Ryan Hill's next 5-year plan? That was a question my dad always asked me when I was growing up, write down your 5-year plan. And he actually saved a few of them, and they're pretty hilarious to look at. So,
oh, really?
10 years from now, we'll look back at this, and I can't wait to hear what you said. But what's coming up for
funny.
you?
I should do that.
You should do
my 5-year plan. I mean, I have big goals that I don't know that I'll be able to accomplish, but I will, try.
Sure.
But, we have an amazing group of people here, or one of the top markets in the entire country. I'd like to continue. And my goal that I believe can be achieved, but it's going to be really hard, is try to be in a seat like a Casey Crawford, where you're influencing the whole entire company. Mm-hmm. And I love this business. I'm plugged into it. I eat, sleep, drink it, try to connect with anybody that is also passionate about it. So I'd love to be in that seat and continue to try to, drive our organization that's already thriving into, uncharted territory.
Well, and I think that isn't a stretch either. You're already in that kind of a seat where you are influencing the industry big time. And you have been for, since you started the RE Source. You're surrounding yourself with some pretty amazing people, and, you really are crushing it. And so I don't think that's a stretch. I think you got to start thinking bigger than that, Ryan.
Oh, I love that. I love the challenge.
Yeah.
Renee Rodriguez just said the same thing to me in an Amplify event over 3 days. And I wrote it down. Actually, it's in my office. He actually said it in a different way. He said, "Why are you playing so small, Ryan?" Yeah. And that spoke to me and hit me right between the eyes. And, we have lofty goals for the RE Source too. We've accomplished so much. But I don't think we've even scratched the surface on the capabilities of our team and the value that we can provide for, again, the biggest industry in America.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love all the stuff you've chatted with me about today. This has been fantastic. I'm excited to get this out there and have people listen to it. How can people get in touch with you or hear more about you in the RE source? What's the best way?
Yeah, I'd love for them to join our community. It's the resource.tv. And then we're also on Facebook, just the RE source, which is short for the real estate source. Most people don't know that. But that is the best way. I would love for you to be a part of our community, interact with our shows, share them, like, comment. We're constantly in there engaging with our community. So I love to hear their thoughts, feedback. Sometimes it's negative. Hopefully, the more times it's positive. But I would love for them to reach out to us and be a part of our community. That's the ultimate reward for us.
Awesome. Any last parting words that you want to share or any last pieces of wisdom?
No, I'll tell you, what I'm working on. Again, like I said, working on Ryan Hill's 43.0.
Okay.
I brought some notes. I didn't know if we're going to get there, but in closing, this is what I'm working on right now. And it seems really basic.
Okay.
Maybe some of the things that I've shared seem basic, which is work ethic, pushing past failure, having a plan and a strategy. This last one's probably going to seem basic, but this comes from John Maxwell. So I'm fortunate enough to be coached by one of the best authors in America.
Yeah.
And mentored under John Maxwell. I just hung up with him earlier this morning, and he asked he kind of talked about a similar question and topic, which is what sets people apart professionally, like the truly top. And out of all the attributes, he chose attitude. And there's several people on that call that are CEOs, executives, and myself, lowly Ryan Hills. So I'm learning and writing down a bunch of notes from my conversations on that call. And John Maxwell was talking about attitude. And he's worked with like the owners of Chick-fil-A. He's been doing this for years, right? Like the best of the best in America, running the best organizations he's coached. And he says attitude. And I'm like, well, that seems very basic. Of course we should have a positive attitude. And the more I kind of let my guard down, because I'm like, yeah, I've already figured that out. The more I learned. And I took some notes and I brought them because I knew I wasn't going to remember them because I'm working on this now. So this is what I'm being challenged with. And I wrote down 5 things. So having a positive attitude is essential. It not only determines the level of contentment you have as a person, but it also impacts how others interact with you.
True.
And there's times that I'm positive, but I'm also a realist. So I don't mind like if we're in the mud going, yeah, we're in the mud right now. This sucks. Mm-hmm. Right. But I'm being challenged to be even more positive, more frequently, and have that positive attitude because I love what it said. It determines your level of contentment as yourself, but also impacts how others interact with you. And that's pretty easy to understand. Like, yeah, if you're negative, of course, people are going to be negative back towards you. The second one I wrote down is when you choose to focus on the positive in your surroundings, you tend to see positive things. I mean, that's the most relevant thing we can talk about with COVID. I mean, so many people, including myself, struggle with Facebook and social media and the news just pulling you down. Well, that's the opposite of focusing on positive things. Absolutely. Not that we bury our head in the sand, but we can focus on the positive and kind of tune out the negative. And I think if we all collectively did that, we might actually be able to move the needle in a positive direction versus what we faced all year, which is just kind of seems like hate and division. And yeah, we have a lot of things as a society we need to work on, but I think you fix that with love and positivity versus pointing out and dividing people. So that was a big one that hit me between the eyes. Actions are always an outward expression of your inner feelings. When you change how you feel, you change how you act.
I like that.
And that one hit me between the eyes. So these are all things that I'm working on, that I'm looking at every day to stay, top of mind. The fourth one, if you start with a negative attitude about a person, you tend to focus on all the negative qualities. A positive attitude about a person causes you to focus on their positive qualities. What Maxwell does, and this was also a huge aha moment, when he meets somebody for the first time, he assesses them at 10.
Okay.
Now me, on the other hand, and I'm working on this, I tend to force people to earn my respect.
Yeah.
So I'll joke around, like I might give a person a 1. It's not that low. But they're definitely earning the 2 and earning the 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And I just thought, what an amazing positive approach to do the opposite and assign everybody a 10. Now, you may be able to lose that based off of your actions.
Sure.
But I would rather be that positive force like John Maxwell and see the best in everybody and start with a 10. And so I really am being challenged with changing my perspective in the way that I interact with people, especially initially.
Yeah.
Um,
I like
and
that
I know
a lot.
the world will burn you. And so you tend to kind of have those scars on you. And that's why people maybe are more reserved or wait to have people show their true colors and earn respect. I get that.
Right.
I've lived that. But what a positive, cool way to go out throughout life, just seeing the best in people and assigning them 10s.
Right. And it kind of goes back to what you had originally said too, is that it changes your attitude. It changes how you react to people if you see them as a 10, and then it'll change how they react to you too. So it's kind of like a domino effect of positivity. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Full circle. And then the last one, again, seems super easy, maybe sophomorical, but don't let the negative voices in your head influence how you see things, because that'll obviously influence how you see the world. If you're constantly in your head negatively, obviously that changes how you see things. So immediately find the positive in the situation before moving forward. Remember, you can choose what you think. And I took that to my son when I heard that, because he's 17 years old and he's been struggling with COVID. Yeah. And he's not working out with his friends, not seeing his friends, not getting out. He's out of his routine. And he was having a tough time with it. And that killed me as a father who prides himself at trying to be a good dad. Like I haven't pivoted fast enough during COVID because my son is struggling with this.
Right.
And he was doing exactly that. He was stuck in his head, constantly worrying about the negative things, including like the election. Like, bro, you can't even vote yet. Why do you care? And then mask and all these other things, including school. And I just had to take that to him and say, hey, bud, vulnerable, trying to be vulnerable. And this is what we should do as parents. Like, we're constantly learning. We're not perfect. Hey, bud, this is what I'm learning and I'm working hard at this. And I feel like this might be something that you'll find valuable. And we shared and talked about it over the dinner table. And he was like, yeah, Dad, like it means the world. I need to change. And I'm like, yeah. And I need to help you to get there and be accountable. And when I see you kind of getting quiet and alone in your thoughts, like, what are you thinking? Remember, I kept telling Carson, remember, you can change the way you think.
Yeah.
It doesn't all have to be focusing on the negative and what has been taking away from us this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that that's super important for you to be able to pass it on to your kids. But in order to be able to do that, you got to recognize it yourself too.
Right.
So, and I think it was Wayne Dyer that said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So it's kind of like the same thing. If you decide, okay, we've been stuck in the house and we haven't been able to be out and do all the things we want to do, but look at all this family time and the growth that we've had together as a group, or, whatever it is, whatever the positive thing that has come out of it. If you look at it in a more positive light and you attract that positivity to you, I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So thank you for letting me share. That's the stuff I'm working on at this moment. There's quite a few other things that Maxwell brought up. I just thought it was interesting that the world's best author, working with the best people in the world, thought that positive attitude was the most, the number one most highly rated attribute between top performers and not. So
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it sounds simplistic, but when you think more about it, it's not easy to do. And it can be, but it's not necessarily our first step that we take.
Yeah. So, for me, it doesn't come authentically. It doesn't mean I can't change it.
Sure.
It's just going to take time and commitment to change it. And eventually, kind of like we talked about earlier, it will be part of my DNA. Yeah. Right now, it's not. So I got to keep jumping in the deep end with this.
Yeah, I love it. Look at that full circle. You came around back to the deep end. Perfect. Ryan, it has been awesome chatting with you. Thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with me.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the Idaho Physio. We hope you gained some insights, inspiration, and some ideas on how to be amongst the top performers and high achievers in the world. Know someone that's crushing it that we should talk to? Let us know. As always, we welcome your feedback. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share our podcast with friends, family, heck, even complete strangers. Because hey, who couldn't use a little inspiration these days? Thanks again. Now get out there and be amazing.